David.
Yes.
Great to see you. How are you doing?
Very good. Nice to meet you, Catherine.
Yeah, lovely to meet you as well. Let's start with the big question. What's going on for you?
Well, we've had a wonderful conference here. Great to talk to so many great people that are advancing the data issues that they have inside of their firms, and to see them really look for next generation solutions and probably come out of here with some new approaches that they're going to go try in order to advance their data initiatives at their companies.
Yeah, I always use the word and terminology of journey. I don't think data will ever be done, so I think it's quite an appropriate use of the language. But I think what you've just said there about kind of accelerating, we've gone on a period of transformation these last few years, more so than ever before. And I think people are really looking to what's next, because they're getting the foundational stuff, they're getting it done. So now it's what's next. And I mean, from your perspective, what is next?
Well, I think everybody's at a sort of a different phase, but I do think post-COVID, everybody's been forced to advance and accelerate. So we look at, a lot of the firms that we talk to, and they come to us and they said, look, we know that we need to win with data, but at the same time we have some challenges. And the challenge is that from a data perspective, there's more data than ever before. Is it good data? Is it bad data? But they're having to contend with different types of data, both structured, unstructured, third-party data sets. And then they take that data and they bring it into an architecture which is advancing as well. The only challenge is that as new great products show up in that architecture, the old stuff doesn't seem to leave as fast. So they've got a combination of data sprawl and tech sprawl. And then unfortunately, what you get out of that is a lack of data trust, where people just don't believe the data to be reliable. As much as they've got it, they know with enough time, they'll get to the point of where they can trust the data. At first blush, there's some skepticism about the data being accurate and being something that you can really use and depend on to make decisions. And then I think the final tier, and I think it really permeated through this conference, is that there's also a talent issue. And that if you've got great talent, they're hard to maintain, but there's just not enough universities cranking out the people, the data engineers, the data architects, the data scientists that can basically be hired inside these firms. So as much as they'll still go and strive and attract that talent, you've got to win with technology as well, right? You can't hire your way to execution in that arena. Yes, you've got to always be on the leading edge to go find great talent, but at the same token, you have to do things slightly differently. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing clients that are saying, look, we're advancing the ball. There's no doubt about it, because if you don't advance, you're going to die. But the question is, how do we accelerate? And I've seen some wonderful clients both at this location in the last 2 days that are indeed accelerating with data, and the clients that I talk to around the world.
Yeah, so I suppose that from your perspective, it's really the kind of operational side of data that's needing to be focused on right now.
Correct. Yeah, we're unique in that we're not trying to be a next generation data governance product at Excel Data. We view this as a real operational problem. There's many other world-class vendors that have solved the data governance problem, that continue to solve the data governance problem. But this has become like dynamic data supply chains are difficult to manage. And you really have to view them just like a large retailer or a large automotive firm would view their inbound supply chain, where it's a living, breathing thing. You've got to get your hands wrapped around that. And just like you wouldn't have blind spots on your supply chain, you can't have blind spots in your IT architecture either.
Yeah. And when customers have come along and partnered with you, what have they noticed since doing that in terms of dealing with these challenges? How have you enabled them to kind of tackle some of those?
Yeah, I think first of all, I wouldn't want to paint it with a broad brush. I think every client is a little bit different. I think we strive to get to know the needs of our clients before we jump in and prescribe. We have some generic capabilities that we can tout, but we tend not to. We really want to get to know the client. And where they have acute pain is where we're going to apply our technology. So one example of acute pain would be, hey, we think we've got great data rules that we've built and curated over the years, but now we're having trouble managing whether or not the data is moving from point A to point B. As much as we've got great rule capability and an early detection system around rules that are adhered to, if only 2/3 of your data set arrives, you're probably going to make a bad decision based on inaccurate data. That's just one example. Other clients say, look, we're backlogged with our rule creation. Even though we think we've got the best tools in the industry, the volume is just so daunting, and the talent issue is also equally daunting, that we're going to look at new types of rule application products in order to go tackle that problem. And then finally, we've had clients that have just said, hey, we have the inevitable job that runs every night. It runs 6-7 days a week. It's supposed to fire off at 8 o'clock in the morning. And for whatever reason, because of the nature of this particular job, they don't run on time and we're missing SLAs and service level objectives. Can you help us? So we take each one of those individually, we break them down, we invest ahead of the curve, show them what can be done by way of a prototype, and then quickly move to put people into production. So we really, I think, are taking a getting to know the client kind of approach before we jump in and subscribe.
And I mean that personal approach, I mean, any industry you go to, having that 360 view of your customers, their wants, needs, desires, and also the journey they're going on. And I think you're so right to say that you don't want to generalize, because even here today, although there'll be similar challenges and everyone is kind of dealing with it, but they're dealing with it in very different ways. In the sense of where they are on that maturity scale, and then all the things that impact it. You mentioned talent there. Some are dealing with these challenges, but some are actively recruiting. They're able to go and get these people in to help with their challenges. Others are still just grappling with the exec being on board to even get the permission to go out and recruit the people to begin with. So I love that you and your organization have this approach of being really personal with your customers. Looking to the next 12 months, what's really exciting for you that's coming up?
I think the data journey itself, as you alluded to earlier, there's not going to be an end of the book. There's going to be another volume and another volume and another volume. And I think the most, last 3 years, one of the major volumes was obviously the migration to the cloud. But I think now we're going to see companies that are going to take advantage of cloud services from multiple clouds. They're going to fall in love with Google BigQuery because they like how you can buy by the drink, and maybe that's a better technology for large data sets versus running Snowflake in an AWS environment because that's where they started their cloud journey. And there might even still be some data left on premise if you're in a regulated industry. So I think the world of hybrid and ground to cloud is going to be another area that people have to tackle. And then within that, the gains from the cloud are wonderful, right? Agility, the ability to scale up dynamically when you need to do backups and mundane things quickly and easily. I think people now accept that as table stakes, but I think the next journey in that arena is now going to be the amount of money that you spend on the cloud. Just like, once, it was so great just to get to the cloud and take advantage of these agile services, now CFOs are leaning in and they're saying, look, we don't mind spending the money, but that better be tied to value. And we don't want to be flying blind. We can't get caught at the end of a month or a year end with a very, very large AWS bill without knowing, what it is that we got for that. And I think, I'm not picking on AWS at all, but any of the cloud vendors right now are going to have to continue in order to be competitive with each other to show great value and do it in a cost containment strategy.
Yeah, I agree completely. For our viewers at home, what would you say, given you've been at the event for a couple of days now, you've taken in lots of conversations and obviously before that as well. Yeah. What would you say is your main takeaway in terms of your key learning?
I think there were two themes. I also spoke on a panel that kept emerging. I'm very impressed with the way people have now put together their data teams to be cross-functional. It's no longer that we go in and secure someone with a PhD who's a data scientist or a high-end math degree, master's plus. I'm finding that that person is often complemented with data engineers, with data architects, with citizen data scientists. So some people can bring the context of the business, other people can kind of bring the math aptitude, and between the two of them, they can really go and improve outcomes for companies. So that was a takeaway that I heard time and time again. Like the best and brightest speakers in here kept talking about the cross-functional team. So I thought that was really unique. Number two, I think that firms they've really accepted the fact that in order to win with data, the E-team has to be involved. I think 3, 4, 5 years ago, you never knew, right? There were firms that founded themselves in the 1900s that have managed to run a great business for a long period of time, and there's the inevitable, hey, in my day, we did it all on a ledger. I think now firms all the way up and down the C-suite, the executives are much more bought in. So with my panel, I had 4 members up on stage. 3 out of 4 of the E-team memberships were absolutely data-driven, absolutely committed to the program, and it was just refreshing to see that you're not working that hard at the C-suite. So I think those were 2 of the critical items that I took away. And then the third one, I had posed a question to the panel, which were end users, right? Basically, I had an airline company, I had a pet food company, and I had the roadside assistance company up on stage with me. So very vast, industries. I mean, literally, one was a 120-year-old business. Another one is the emerging division within a CPG company. It was Mars. And then the third one is a very dynamic kind of mid-tier, jet company. And all of those companies, when I posed the question, what could a vendor do better? And I was really drawn into their answers. Their answers were, number one, to please get to know us. And number two, don't be afraid to challenge us. You as a vendor visit with our peers all over the place. You have a lot of knowledge that maybe us in our silo, in our company where we're so laser focused without poking our head up and coming to great trade shows like this, we may not have the perspective you have. So don't be afraid to challenge what we do. Even because you see what really works inside of Fortune 500 companies and very dynamic young digital upstarts. And we want to know what that is. So I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting, and given the sheer amount of takeaways that you've got from the event, I'm not going to keep you for much longer, so thank you so much for having a chit chat with me today.
You got it. Well, thank you, Catherine. Bye-bye.